Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, we are elimination +1, and the fingers are already starting to point at each other for why we are in the situation we are in Lakerland. We'll unpack all of that stuff next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Fridays, and sometimes on weekends. We get this thing up right and early for you. Always fresh Lakers content, Andy, no matter how you get your podcast or where you get your podcast, and we will never, ever make you pay for it. But nope. Management makes a different choice, but that has nothing to do with us.
Well, it's not going to be right now, at least for this particular podcast. That would feel like a saucy move
between now and when we publish.
Yes.
Somebody send us an email, please.
I think if I had to guess, I don't know everything about the inner workings and who decides ultimately the business models, but I'm going to guess that before they decide to put this particular podcast behind a paywall, the Lakers are going to need to be 500.
That's the incentive. It's like it's a weird version. It's a weird version of the taco promotion.
Yeah, I don't want to tell David Locke how to do his job, because Lord knows he has built something really successful from the ground up. It's very impressive. Yeah. Now's not the time, David. It's just not the time.
Read the room. Read the room. All right, so it's not the exact meaning of the Spider-Man meme, of course, Andy, but there's just in terms of the fingers, a lot of fingers pointing at different people or whatever. The Lakers have reached that, and it took about a day.
It's not you. Like, hey, it's you. Hey, no, it's you.
No, it's you. No, it's you. No, it's you.
Yeah, it is finger pointing right now. That's what's happening.
Me. It's not. It's the opposite. If it's not me or you, it's me. No. It's you. So we'll get to that. One of the interesting things, though, about the final 3 games of this season is the idea of LeBron James and whether or not he is going to try to qualify for a scoring title. Technically speaking, he can do it without playing in the final 3 games, but it's convoluted and weird. The cleanest way, LeBron plays in 2 of the final 3, qualifies, and obviously scores more than Joel Embiid. This is really kind of a 2-part question. Do you think he would do it? Maybe 3 parts. Do you think do you care if he does it? Do you think it's okay? And then most important to me, how do you think Lakers fans would react to LeBron missing these 2 games that eliminated the Lakers from contention for the playoffs and then showing up totally, obviously, nakedly only to win a scoring title? Answer them in any order you would like.
I mean, okay, I would say first things first in terms of whether or not he should do this. Practically speaking, I am somebody, I've made this point before, that is of the belief that there is a reservoir of minutes and like a reservoir of production, and there is an element of borrowed time for LeBron, even as somebody that at age 37 has put himself in contention for a scoring title, which is effing incredible. Like that. I mean, that really, remove everything that's happened with this season, how disappointing it is. It's amazing. I still think that if you're going to do this, you have to consider the pragmatic elements of are you potentially putting yourself at injury risk, because LeBron has not been playing because of that ankle. And I'm not doubting the severity of it, but you are potentially walking a pretty tight line of, hey, couldn't play in those games before. Now I'm able to play, and it might be legitimate. It might have taken that long.
Oh, that was a nasty injury.
Yes, it was.
And he was clearly hobbled when he did come back.
Right. I'm not even. I want to make it clear. I'm not trying to cast doubt on whether or not LeBron could have played in those games or not. I'm just saying what it will look like. I think there needs to be a minutes limit on some level. Like, I don't think LeBron should play 43 minutes overtime where we are right now in pursuit of this title, because I don't want to see him putting himself at that type of risk. Do I think he might do it? Yeah, I think he might. I don't think it's necessarily a given, but I think he might. Do I think fans will enjoy it? Probably not. Do I think they will be livid? Probably depends on how well he plays. If he sort of scrapes his way to 30, I think
I was about
he
to say,
might look
ironically, if he comes out and just crushes it, I could almost see people being angry.
Yes.
Like, wait a minute, what?
Right. Like, how much did your ankle heal up between the Phoenix loss and Thursday? If he plays, like if he played today, like, and again, to be clear, 48 hours can help. Like, it absolutely can help, but it is optically complicated. Put it that way.
Complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he'd almost be better off, like you say, just sucking. And like LeBron James needed 52 shots to get to 31 points today, or whatever it is.
But then you start getting to, you got the energy to put up 52. We watched Kobe in his final game when he put up 50 shots. I believe that was a career high for Kobe's entire career, including like overtimes, peak Mamba, the 35 point per game 2006 season. Kobe had never put up 50 shots. Like, I remember, I talked about this,
which was a little surprising.
It was kind of surprising, but I mean,
not once.
Okay, for real. When Kobe was heading into that last game, if you had said to me, what is more likely to happen? Kobe puts up 50 shots or scores 60 points. I'd have said 60 points.
In a heartbeat, no, because there's no way he's physically capable of putting up 50 shots in a game.
I did not think he could do that at that stage of his career. Like 50.
Do you think
shots.
he did? I don't think so.
No,
Actually, he seemed surprised by it after the game.
He said he was surprised after the game.
That's what I'm saying.
Even with the expectation of, all right, Kobe's going to be putting up some shots. It's his last game. Everybody's here to see him do that. 50 was a lot. I didn't think he was physically capable of it. If LeBron puts up 50 shots, people are going to be like, dude, seriously? There's kind of a can't win.
There's a tight needle here to thread. I mean, I don't think my mindset here is the same.
Kind of needs to go 11 for 11 from behind the arc and sit out.
Sit 11 for 11 in 14 minutes, and he's done.
Yeah, he just needs to go on a heater and sit.
Like NBA Jam. He's red hot.
I mean, really.
But like I am I think of different mind than a lot of Lakers fans would be on this, and like in the sense that I think it's fine. Like the guy wants to, like, he's done a lot in his career. He's only won one scoring title, and he made it clear earlier in the year. Like, it bugs him that people do not think of him as a premier scorer in NBA history. And I think part of the reason is he's pass first guy, he's Magic, not Michael, and all that stuff. But it's also because he's only won one scoring title. And guys who are transcendent scorers, you think of them as people who have won scoring titles. I think it's okay to have individual goals. I think he would have played if he was capable.
Yeah.
But I also saw a lot of the Kobe would have played. And I also saw a lot of the, all that, like, and so this is one of those moments where kind of the mythology of Kobe bumps into the realities of LeBron, that you are not really one of us. And, we respect you and we love you when you're, love the championship. I don't think Lakers fans dislike LeBron, but there's not that level of sort of institutional loyalty to him. And so something like this, I think, whereas Kobe wouldn't have had to worry about optics, LeBron, to the extent that he even cares about them, and I don't actually think he does, and I don't blame him, the optics won't work.
I mean, to the point you made about Kobe, and then we can move forward. Laker fans definitely, I don't necessarily want to say definitely, because I think there have been a lot of misgivings among Laker fans about the effect of LeBron on this organization, the power that he has over it and clutch and stuff like that. And there are a lot of people we hear from that think that is damaging for the organization. In certain respects, it might be. But even if they don't dislike LeBron, even if they like LeBron, they loved Kobe. Loved Kobe. And LeBron is not loved that way. The other thing, though, I will say, to be fair to LeBron, with the idea of Kobe would have played through it, it is important to note that LeBron has played 6,000 or so more minutes than Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
That matters.
That's Kobe, period. Not Kobe just post Achilles.
I'm talking playoff minutes, regular season minutes. LeBron has played 6,000 something minutes more. I'm not saying that definitively means that Kobe wouldn't have played if he had those same 6,000. Not saying one thing or the other. I'm just saying you have to consider
or the same
that.
injury, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying you have to consider this.
Yeah, I think
6,000 minutes is like 3 extra seasons worth of minutes, and LeBron's always played 19 of them.
LeBron has a pretty good track record of playing when he can. And I think Kobe had a pretty good track record of playing when he can.
Yep.
Those guys take that very seriously. Both of them, to their credit.
Yep.
All right. Enough of that, Andy. Let's get to the part that we really like. Pointing fingers.
Yep.
Because it started and it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop until we hit this button. All right. We'll do that and then we'll talk finger pointing next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Right now, Masters going on. You got great championship odds plus podcasts and reviews for all the different leagues this season. They got big MLB previews for the AL and NL. And, like everyone, they're big on the Dodgers right now, but they're also intrigued by the Padres and the Giants. The NL West could be an absolute bloodbath. And no mention of the Angels among the top teams in the AL, despite having Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani on the same team. Yikes. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. So head to the website today or use your mobile device. Learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Okay. So there was a little bit of finger pointing from Frank Vogel. There was some implied finger pointing in a new story from Eric Pincus on kind of where the Lakers might go from here. There was pointing to injuries. Which finger would you like to start with, Andy? It is Thursday or Wednesday was your birthday. This is my gift to you. Because I'm a cheap bastard.
You know what? I'm just going to say it right now. You got me a very, very nice gift, and I appreciate it.
Well, a man who turns 75 deserves a nice gift.
Thank you. Let's start with Frank Vogel. Just because, first of all, I want to give a shout out to our friend Bill Oram, who managed to catch up with Frank after the Phoenix loss, got some exclusive, I think it was phone time with him. And Frank went on record in ways that he has been passive aggressively kind of hinting at over the course of this season, but never this overt. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see Frank Vogel go there. So let's start with that.
All right, so Bill noted the comment from Frank regarding the Lakers defense. They entered Tuesday's game 23rd in defensive rating, which seems high. I don't think that game helped, so perhaps they fell down. It is worth noting that even as much of a tire fire as last year became, the Lakers still finished with a very highly ranked defense. Did they finish at #1? I don't remember.
No, I don't believe so.
But it was top. They clung to #1 way longer than they had any right to.
Absolutely.
This year they couldn't do it. And this was the quote that got everyone's attention. The habit building. There was a lot to make up with. And this isn't just about injuries. This is about think about the context. Guys that did not have great defensive habits. You know what I mean? So you coach it on a daily basis and you push them to be accountable. But there was just a lot to overcome with this year's team. That's not we were injured a lot. That's not we just didn't have a lot of continuity. Those things matter. But what that quote says is, I was given a bunch of guys who are crap defenders. And what do you want me to do with that? Like, I have to drill into them overcoming often careers worth, talking Russell, talking Melo, whatever.
Monk.
Some of those careers are really long, some of them are a little shorter. Like, I'm trying to undo.
And to be fair, guys like Melo and Malik Monk, I think really leaned into what was being asked of them.
But I think that I think reinforces the point Vogel is trying to make. I cannot make chicken salad out of chicken bleep. And I was given a lot of defensive chicken bleep this year, and it's hard to argue with him.
If I may add another quote from Frank Vogel in this story with Bill Oram, and people should definitely check it out because, like I said, if nothing else, it is more candid than you will really ever see Frank Vogel with this
Andy,
team.
it's a man who knows he is not long for the gig. So,
well, he's only going to have so many more opportunities to be this candid as the coach of the Lakers because that ends, I believe, Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Unfortunately, that's the way it is.
We have pre-taped our emergency pod.
The nature, there's a quote from Frank Vogel, the nature of how our offensive pieces fit together didn't allow us to play with the defensive size and positional size that I typically like to have that give us that type of defensive success. So there are a lot more smaller lineups to open up the floor because of how our offensive pieces fit. Trying to make the offense work compromised our defense directly.
Yep. That's the thing. But, this even, and again, I am not trying to be revisionist history. I'm not trying to pretend that I called this disaster from the beginning. I thought the Lakers would win the Western Conference, thought they'd be a little healthier than this. And, so I'll caveat, they were not going, they would have been worse than my expectation, even if things had gone better. I 100% missed that. But one thing we did point out is they were going to need some things to, it was going to be a long time to figure it out because they had very few two-way players. When they got rid of KCP, when they got rid of Caruso, when they got rid of, Kuzma and KCP particularly, they got rid of their two-way guys who could give you a little offense, who could give you a little defense. With these Lakers, you had to choose.
I mean, hell,
and as it turned out, you mostly had to choose between different offensive guys because none of them, other than, I guess, Reeves, were any good at defense.
I mean, they seemed disinterested in bringing back a guy like Wes Matthews. Wes Matthews would have given them some two-way play. Like, even somebody like him who's been sort of forgotten and would have been inexpensive. They didn't target someone like him. And so there was a lot of that.
And I think, to Lakers fans, the frustration that they felt with a lot of the lineups that Vogel would put out there, this gets back to the point I was making, I think it was earlier in the week, might have been last week. They were focused so much on which poison Frank Vogel was picking and not focused on the fact that all of these options were poisonous and would kill you. And so did he optimize the lineups? No, but when you play Malik Monk, you have to have some sort of contingency to make up for Malik's defensive shortcomings. And I know he was trying, but he's not a good defender. He's just not. And effort makes up for some of it, but it doesn't make up for all of it. Melo tried. His limitations are obvious. And so if you're going to play Melo, and you need to because somebody's got to stretch the floor and somebody's got to score, well, then you got to compensate somewhere else if you can. And, folks, that's Avery Bradley. And we can argue about whether or not he's an effective choice, but that's part of the reason is, and I don't think he's wrong about any of these points that he's making. He was given bad players to work with from a defensive standpoint, and the directive to try to fix the offense catastrophically tanked the defense, which also didn't help the offense either.
No,
the offense was also bad.
Look, I don't think Frank Vogel did as good a job of playing a bad hand as he could have. I think he at times was stubborn with doing things he wanted to do, like, for example, staying big as a first choice. Brian, you may recall, heading into the season, I was very openly skeptical at the idea. I don't care how much we heard about AD as the primary center of this team. I kept saying, I need to see it to believe it. They did not sign both Dwight Howard and DeAndre Jordan for one of those guys to be primarily the third stringer. I don't buy it. Like I just, and turned out.
I mean, injuries did have something to do with that at the beginning of the year. Like they were out of bigs, but
I don't think that's what they were going to do. But the front office gave Frank Vogel a roster that was basically the bizarro version of what you would call a Frank Vogel roster. And in the best case scenario, that was them giving real props and, I guess, respect to Frank Vogel's ability to make any roster good defensively, and them also acknowledging, rightly, the offense needs to get better. It struggled even at times when they won the championship. But it also reflects, and this is something that's going to become relevant when the Lakers look for whoever it is that's going to replace Frank Vogel, this was them not empowering their coach, in part because, as you and I have said a lot, Brian, I don't think they really care that much about empowering a coach.
But
I don't know how much they care about who, unless it's like somebody like Phil Jackson's level. I'm not sure they care how much about getting the coach. I think for sure they have no idea what they want.
Okay, but let me ask you this before. I totally agree with that. But then we'll break out of this. Don't you think to some degree there was a little bit of, well, Frank can just take whatever we got here and he'll just fix it. Frank will fix it. It's fine. Like Frank's really good at defense. Look what he did last year when everybody got hurt.
Yeah.
And so like they both devalued him, but also just assumed that he was brilliant enough to, or talented enough with that stuff to figure it out. It's very weird.
It's weird, but at the same time, though, like for as much respect as they may have had for his defensive acumen, they couldn't have valued it that much because they gave him the fake extension. You know what I mean? Like there are so many conflicting messages.
No, I agree with you, but I'm saying it's the contradiction is they devalued Frank and they devalue his value to the organization broadly, certainly his long-term value, while apparently seeming to overestimate and overvalue his ability to make literally any collection of NBA players into a good defense.
Okay,
it's just
Brian,
it's just a weird contradiction.
Yeah, it is a weird contradiction. And coming up before we get into part 2 of what is clearly now finger pointing season, there's an irony that hit me with
who's at
Lakers.
Fault? You.
Yeah, you know what? No, nobody has just been saying right now, I've made a huge mistake. Nobody is just willing to say that. You can already see everybody is just looking to point the fingers at everyone else.
Wasn't me.
But as we get into this search for Frank Vogel's replacement, there's an irony that dawned on me yesterday that I want to share before, again, we get into the next part of finger pointing. So we'll talk about that next.
People really should watch the YouTube version. All right, we'll get to all that next.
Okay, so they're going to be looking for a new coach. And assuming...
Are you sure about... Am I supposed to yes and through that? Or
no,
I'm just willing to play along. Okay,
I'm setting up my point.
All right.
They're going to be looking for a new coach, Brian. And assuming, as all indications would put out there, they want to stay in the LeBron James business, which would mean getting him to commit to an extension. He has 1 more year remaining on his contract, could get another 2 years. LeBron is going to have some say in this. Maybe they don't just say to him, who do you want? That's who we hire. But LeBron's voice is going to matter, as it has with everything.
Mm-hmm.
They could have actually had LeBron's number 1 coach in hand right now, the guy that they saw as LeBron's coach, Ty Lue.
They had a cake.
Still under contract.
They got a cake.
A guy who is considered one of the best coaches in the league. Frankly, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but he's better than the dude they hired instead of him, Frank Vogel.
Yes, he is. Yep.
He is as good or better as anybody they likely will get to replace Vogel. And because they were so, they did not want to give him the 5-year deal that they had just given Luke Walton, even though Ty Lue was more established, better credentials than Luke. They didn't want to give him the 5-year deal that Monty Williams got in Phoenix. The Lakers met with Monty. Monty chose Phoenix, but I'm sure something like that played a role in it. Now they're going to be looking for somebody different that LeBron is going to have to be happy with. And they could have just had that guy anyway, and he would have been really good. And they're in this situation because they are shockingly bad at hiring coaches.
Here's something that Eric Pincus has a story out on Bleacher Report, who we just had on. It's still just a phenomenal show, which
we'd bring him every day if we could.
Well, but in all seriousness, I think that show is still, if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel, You can, on the channel, there is a podcast that we have pinned to the top of it. I'm pretty sure that Pincus podcast is pinned to the top of our page. So if you missed it, it's easy to find. By the way, it's evergreen. Like, that thing is going to be relevant. It's the only podcast we've ever done that is going to be, that wasn't just an interview with somebody about like something, you know, that happened 50 years ago, that is going to be relevant for the next like 6 months.
No, it's a good interview.
But he had a nugget in there about, for example, if they
the new article,
in the new article, which I believe, Andy, you tweeted out earlier on Wednesday
at Cam Brothers,
that, you know, they might go after Doc Rivers if he gets fired in Philly. We could spend a week on that. Presumably will. They also would go after Quinn Snyder, which we talked about after the Utah game last week. But
former Laker assistant.
Yes, that Quinn would be also up for the San Antonio job if Pop retires. And my initial thought was, I'd rather have the San Antonio job. If I'm Quinn Snyder, who doesn't seem like a guy who is desperate to coach LeBron, desperate to coach, but wants a good job where he can make the right amount of money and succeed. You know, he's worked for the Jazz for a long time. Like, you go from the Jazz to the Spurs, that seems like a fairly, you know, congruent kind of thing. I'd rather have that gig. Not just because of like LA's too hot. Like, I like that roster. I like the future of it. They've got draft picks and they have a coherent structure in their front office. They value coaches. They have a support system. They make sense in what they do. They're not weird. They don't have the Ramby. They don't. I mean, all that stuff makes, and it's a weird thing to say, I guess, to some people, that why would you want to coach the Spurs instead of coaching LeBron James and the Lakers? But I don't think it's that weird.
This is something.
I know there wasn't a nugget from Bill from the Pincus article, which contains a moment of finger pointing, Andy. But it just,
we'll get to
in terms of talking about the coaching, this is one of the things that jumped out at me.
Well, to underscore the point that you're making, also over at Bleacher Report, Jake Fisher, great reporter, friend of the pod, he's been on with us before. There's a nugget in a piece that he had that I believe came out on the 5th of April about the eventual coaching search. And let me read this part of it. Multiple league figures contacted by Bleacher Report referenced the possibility that Lakers senior basketball advisor Kurt Rambis returns to the sideline after several previous coaching stops in the league, including an interim stint as Los Angeles head coach. However, Rambis is said to be an integral figure in the front office, unlikely to resume a coaching role. On one hand, that's good news, because I don't think anybody thinks that Kurt Rambis should be on the coaching staff. It's been bad enough that he occasionally decides that he needs to sit in on this stuff and offer suggestions. But the fact that it actually needs to be clarified at all, because people have been wondering, hey, Kurt Rambis, could he be a part of this, speaks to, Brian, why you think Quinn Snyder might actually prefer a Spurs gig. That it actually has to be spelled out at all.
Some of the stuff,
because that's so ridiculous, you shouldn't assume it would happen.
Right. It's not always fair. Not everything with the part of the gig. There are a lot of good things. There are a lot of good things that come with being, the Lakers GM of the Lakers front office. Like, some of them being LeBron James just decides that he wants to come play for your team, and you don't have to do much about it. He just lands the plane. Just get the crap off the runway and let LeBron land the plane, and he will. But the downside to some of it is, like, sometimes things get said that aren't fair. It may be that, like, Rob reads that in the paper and was like, in the paper. I mean, come on. Although Rob is quaint enough that he might just like the ink stained fingers. And we'd be like, nobody's putting Kurt Rambis on the coaching staff. Nobody's doing that. But it's because of the way they operate, and because it's LA, and the way that it's not crazy, because they don't make it clear that things like that are crazy. So if you don't make it clear that something isn't crazy, then we're left to believe that it might not be. And there's that's the only alternative there.
Should we hit the finger pointing quote before we go?
Yeah, and we don't have to unpack all of it, but I feel like it's the kind of thing people should know so that we can just jump right in with a high efficiency on Friday.
So Eric has a piece that is, like a look at, what lies ahead for the Lakers, what's coming next, all that sort of stuff. And, there's different things like LeBron's future, AD's future, Russell Westbrook, but also just what do the people in charge, like at least the front office people in charge at the top, is there going to be change? How do they assess what's going on? And Eric said that he does not think there's going to be a whole lot of changes at the top. Like he's not anticipating anything like that. But there's one paragraph that jumped out at us. The buzz around the league suggests that general manager Rob Pelinka has another year to get the Lakers back on track. The blame internally appears to be focused on injuries, Russell Westbrook, and LeBron James for pressuring the team to trade for Russell Westbrook. That, Brian, does not feel like accountability season.
No. You may remember, Andy, on Wednesday's show when I expressed some degree of concern that the Lakers might learn the wrong lessons from asking themselves about how good they would have been had people not gotten hurt. Let's just say this little nugget here from Eric, who, as we have said many times, is as careful a writer and reporter, I think, as there is in the NBA in terms of how he phrases things.
Yep.
And not trying to be hot takey.
Mm-hmm.
I did not like that sentence.
Well,
it was not comforting.
We're going to break down more of this. So let's earmark more of it for Friday's show.
Yes, but it's important to leave people with a horrible sense of dread as you sign off.
But with that idea of, again, the blame internally appears to be focused on injuries, Russell Westbrook, and LeBron James for pressuring the team to trade for Westbrook. As I retweeted out with that quote, sure, Pelinka, the Ramby, and Genie were all obviously strongly against getting Russ. But once LeBron entered the facilities wearing a vest filled with explosives and threatened to blow the place sky high unless they made the deal, what can you do? Like, this notion that LeBron pressuring the team to make this deal, which we both think did happen. But the idea that A, it was only LeBron's pressure that made this happen, and B, that LeBron's pressure automatically means it has to happen. Let's just say, Brian, there's a lot to discuss from that.
I do not agree with that. All right. So Locked On Lakers on YouTube, where you can see my incredulous face when these quotes are read. Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's gonna be a spicy offseason. I mean, it's gonna, I'm disappointed that it happens as fast as it has for all kinds of reasons, but the nuts and bolts and the guts of this is going to be real interesting. So Locked On Lakers on YouTube. We'll see everybody on Friday.